Welcome to the Diesel Podcast presented by DFC Diesel. If you're watching this on YouTube and aren't subscribed, make sure and click the subscribe button, like, comment, let us know what you think about the episode. If there's a particular guest or topic that you'd like to hear from or about, we'd love to be able to take your suggestions and then get them onto future episodes. Today I'm going to be chatting with Rislone and talking about DEF crystallization, how DPFs can get clogged, and also some fuel issues that we face at the pump. So I'm looking forward to asking them about the products that they have to be able to help us maintain our emissions systems and some tips that they have for us. So it's going to be a great conversation. Before we get to it, I want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors that helps make the Diesel Podcast possible. Kershaw Knives has a 40% off MSRP code for you. If you go to kershaw.kaiusa.com, use code 25TDP40, get you 40% off MSRP. It's a great way to save some money and get some cool gear if you need a new EDC knife or something for hunting, fishing, around the job site, around the house. They've got you covered with a bunch of different options for blade steel, blade shape, handle design, a bunch of different opening mechanisms, and their whole lineup's designed to meet any budget. So we really appreciate them offering that discount code just for Diesel Podcast listeners. All right, let's get to today's podcast with Rislone and talking about DEF crystallization, ways to avoid it, also preventing a clogged DPF, and addressing some issues with fuel that we get straight from the pump. Clayton and Eric, welcome back to the Diesel Podcast to talk about emission systems on diesel trucks, ways to maintain them. I've really enjoyed learning through the different products that you guys have, and I thought, you know what, it'd be really cool to talk with you guys about your entire diesel lineup in case maybe somebody didn't hear our first one or second one. But a lot of these topics I'm starting to see are still out there. The public's still asking about their DPFs, their DEF fluid, fuel, different things like that. So I thought it'd be really cool to chat with you guys today and talk about all the products that Rislone offers for diesel trucks or diesel applications.
Great.
What I think we should start with the DEF. That one was really cool to learn about because I never gave it a second thought. I know these trucks take it, you go get it, you fill it up when you have to. Walk me through some of the issues that exist with DEF fluid as far as like the way it's stored, what can happen when you let the tank sit, maybe you don't drive the truck for a little bit. When it gets low, there's a lot of great insights. I want to make sure people know about issues that exist and then the ways you guys address fixing that.
Yeah, thank you. The DEF does relate to some of the other emission systems too for people that don't drive the diesel trucks like they were intended to. We've talked about that, I know, a few times in these programs. But yeah, if you're buying it, you're towing the camper in the summer, snowmobile trailer in the winter for people up north, and then normally it's just driving back and forth to work. That's what's causing a lot of the issues on these diesel emission systems, in particular on the DEF. So yeah, as DEF sets, depending on when the DEF was produced, it's sitting in a warehouse somewhere, it's going out into a store. If you're buying it in the jugs, that is, you can even start to see some crystallization on the insides of some of those jugs before you even use them. But that's basically what's happening is the water's evaporating out and the urea, the active ingredient in it, is coming out of suspension and turning into these crystals. So different vehicles, if you're in a very, very hot climate, you might see it more, Texas or down south in the summertime compared to some of the northern. But then the northern areas can have some other issues too where it freezes in the wintertime. And that can cause and escalate some of these issues too.
There wasn't really a way in the past, the way that I thought was there wasn't anything to do about it. You just had to, whatever you got at the fuel station or wherever you bought DEF, you were just kind of stuck with it. And I didn't realize what a problem it was for codes, check engine lights, fail-safe mode that trucks might go into. That really kind of shocked me because I'd always hear about either the DPF clogging or something with the EGR, and I never thought, well, what about the DEF fluid? What does the product that you guys have, how does that address when you put it in the truck, preventing the crystallization? And I know there's a ton of different issues. I saw people on YouTube comment on one of our podcasts talking about how they were struggling with this check engine light. And I think the dealer wanted them to replace the whole system for, I don't even remember how much it was, but it was a pretty big amount. But can you talk about the way that it actively tries to prevent those issues that you just mentioned?
Yeah, definitely. So we talked a little bit before about some of the surfactants and some of the detergents that we have in the product itself. So essentially, and as we know, anything that the DEF comes in contact with, it can cause the crystallization issue. So essentially what our product does at different strengths for the couple different types of products that we have is, so it has the detergent in it. So anything that the DEF comes in contact with, once the product's introduced to that system, it'll instantly start breaking down that crystallization that maybe already is built up a little bit. And then from there, the surfactants that are in that technology basically carry those crystals back into solution. And then the surfactant that's in there actually kind of creates an invisible barrier that will keep those crystals from forming again. So it's kind of twofold, where it's cleaning up anything that's already existing, and then it will prevent any sort of those issues moving forward with those specialized surfactants that we have.
Okay. That kind of reminds me a bit of the topic of diesel fuel, and I know it's cold in a lot of part of the country right now, and how it freezes, and when you add a product to be able to help not gel up, it makes sense to me how maybe it operates similarly, not chemically, but as far as operationally, kind of operates like that.
Yep.
I think one of the huge things that can jump up when I talk about DEF or think about it is the shelf life. I'm not sure if there's an expiration date, but I don't know how fresh it is, and I don't know what can happen when it just sits there, maybe inside the store, kind of near the window or back in the corner or something like that. What can happen when it sits for a while?
I think things. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
A couple things that can happen is it just falls out of spec. It's a pretty finite specification between the water urea mix, and I know Eric in particular has bought DEF fluid all over the place, from pulling it out of pumps at the truck stops to a private label name brand, and it was pretty astonishing to us that the product was actually out of spec coming right out of the bottle. Usually if it's just a minor, just outside that spec, they're probably not going to see an issue with their vehicle. But as that continues to go, especially those vehicles that aren't being topped off a lot on the DEF tank, that is going to become an issue.
Are there any contaminants that get into the fluid or the container, or even just having it on the truck? Is there stuff that can contaminate it outside of the crystallization? Maybe dirt, debris, dust, things like that can be an issue?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the bigger questions that we've had since we've launched this product. It's a brand new segment. There has been nothing really like this in North America that's an additive for the DEF. So one of the things that's normal is you can see some foaming or a slight foaming in the DEF fluid, and the consumers and then the shops, they're not necessarily used to that, but making sure everybody's aware, some light foaming with these DEF type additives is absolutely normal and not going to cause any issues. But the stuff that's actually causing an issue would be, let's say somebody doesn't have any DEF and they just put some water in the system, especially if it's hard water. First off, you shouldn't do it no matter what the water is, but you can be introducing minerals and other contaminants that way. Diesel fuel, we do see. I don't know if sometimes it's accidentally. It's usually a smaller hole on most of the vehicles, though, the larger Class 8s than that, they have usually the tank right by the diesel fuel. But that's one, and there's even test strips to find out if you have any petroleum contamination, like from diesel fuel. So that's certainly a big one. You mentioned dust, dirt. If you around that cap, you go to take the cap off. You could be introducing that stuff in there yourself, and just making sure it's clean around the cap when you go to pull the cap off the DEF tank. Coolant would be another one, and you're thinking, well, how would coolant get in there? Twofold. There's a lot of these have coolant circulating through the header pipe that actually sucks the fluid out of the tank to thaw out the DEF fluid, because it does freeze in the wintertime. And if you do have a leak there, you could be introducing coolant in. So that's one way. But the other way that we see coolant and other contaminants going in is if it is a larger fleet and they buy their DEF in bulk, the container that they're using to go from bulk to get it into the vehicle, if it had coolant in it last time, or who knows what it had in it, it should be a dedicated container only used for DEF fluid.
There's a lot of great...
Yeah, and I can add a little more to that too. Another one we've seen is like metal particles, not so much in like the DEF that you'd be adding to the system, but if you have like a pump or a fitting or something that's in the actual system that's starting to wear down. We have seen a couple instances of that. It's somewhat rare, but it is possible. And then to go back to the temperature storage you mentioned, they pretty much tell you to try to keep that DEF at room temperature at best you can. But we've seen in some hotter environments, if that sits for a long time in a really, really warm environment, it can actually precipitate like microbial growth, like fungus or mold or something like that. And once that's introduced to your DEF system, it can actually cause like gelling or like a slime-like substance. And again, it's fairly rare, but it is something to look out for when you're, storing your DEF and when you're kind of maintaining your system.
I know a lot of people that will store it, and it's just a person with a truck. They might use it for their business or something like that, but they'll pick up 4 or 5 of these things, put it in their garage, which isn't heated. And then I guess depending where you are in the country, it could be minus 15 or 0 degrees or something like that. Or in the summer, it's 95 or 100 degrees. And just the environmental factors when we store them, typically outside or in a garage or something like that it's subject to. I love calling attention to it because I think it's a bigger problem than I ever knew existed. That's why I was so shocked to hear about all the issues with DEF. I mean, for me, it was when that was added to pickup trucks, there was kind of some people who I think resisted it. They didn't want to add one more thing to their truck and be forced to have to fill this up. But it also allowed, I think, a bit more reliability in the OEM systems, a bit better fuel economy than the trucks that didn't have it, kind of around that 2011, 12 kind of time frame. And now everything has it. Every pickup truck that we talk about does. And I think just the storage, the contamination, and the problems, I was so shocked by how many people like on YouTube would comment and had issues with their DEF fluid. And then you guys have a solution for it. It was great to be able to talk about and just bring awareness to, because it's one part of a few that are on these trucks, which I know we'll get to some other products and solutions that you guys have for it. So I think it's something we should definitely pay attention to and definitely add to our maintenance program, because it's not cheap to fix them if you got to replace parts, or we talked about, an injector that, introduces it into the system. If that gets clogged or crystallized or something, it's really expensive to fix the system.
Yeah, the manufacturers understand there's an issue. I've seen some Mercedes where they're actually doing drains on these, and they're going to have intervals, or they already have intervals that you're supposed to change it every 20,000 miles. And we all know how the average consumer is. That's not going to happen, even if they knew that they were supposed to do that. So, it's going to be continued education in the marketplace to the OEMs. And the OEMs always push back. I mean, even fuel additives, you read in your owner's manual for most vehicles, it's going to say, do not use any fuel additives, even though they sell their full line of fuel additives themselves, But I understand why some of that stuff happens, that some of the products out there you can't trust. I mean, you are better off just using the fluid itself. But in a lot of these cases, there's just so much issues, and we're learning more and more. We're actually working with Railroad right now. The new Tier 4 for the locomotives, some of these power units are now using DEF, and they're seeing some of this contamination happening exceptionally fast. It's greatly accelerated over what the automotive side is seeing, and I think it's partly by the design. So we're just working, so it's not just trucks thinking about it. I mean, it's agricultural, it's construction, it's all over with these DEF systems.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't seem to be slowing down, and it's I think a maintenance part that we need to think about and then add to our systems. I wanted to ask about the storage a little bit. I think somebody asked about this, or maybe it's just a question I came up with. But say I'm storing it. Can I add this DEF product to, say, half of a jug or 3/4, or maybe I have it in larger quantities to be able to prevent some of those issues, like you had mentioned, Eric, with things growing in it or other types of things? If I'm not using the full jug right at once and it's going to sit in my garage for a little bit, will this product help when I store it?
Yeah, we definitely have some data that shows if you add it to it, it'll lengthen the lifespan of those DEF cubes by it was 15 to 20%, depending on the rest of the storage values. We do have some ongoing testing as far as like the microbial growth and things like that. The nature of our product would not, but that's definitely something that we want to look at in the future, depending on how prevalent we see that out there in the marketplace. But yep, our product will definitely help elongate the storage value of your cubes or whatever jug you're using.
I think the next big thing, well, a lot of times I think this is the first thing a truck owner thinks about when they have this truck. Well, let me step back for a second. I got an email from a listener, and he just bought a 2024 6.7 Cummins, and he said, power's fine. I don't want to add anything to it. So I know a lot of the things I talk about with turbos and tuning and injectors and all that, he's not in the market for that. But he was really focused in on maintenance. This is the last truck he's going to buy. He's going to be towing trailer. He's going to be retiring soon. He doesn't want to deal with anything. I think the maintenance part, typically it's oil changes, drain and fill on the transmission, your differentials, transfer case, things like that are kind of, I think, ingrained into what we need to do. But emission systems was always like, well, when it fails, you go to the dealer, you spend $2,000 to $12,000, you get a new part, and you're back on it. So you guys have introduced this way to be able to be proactive with it. And I think the first thing that pops up is I don't want to clog my DPF. One, I don't want the bad fuel economy as I progressively clog it. I don't want to be stuck in a fail-safe mode, and I really don't want to give the dealer, I don't even know how much it costs, $5,000, $10,000 for a whole new system. And you guys have a product to be able to introduce into our trucks to be able to help with those regens, help prevent that clogging, or if it does start to get clogged, address that. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, the DPF product that we launched a few years ago has been exceeded our expectations, and it's something, like you say, it can be more of a preventive maintenance product, or if you already have the warning light or one of the check engine codes that are associated with that product. But yeah, I mean, we found about every 5,000 miles. You could use it more often, but we do work to be honest with the consumers about what we think is required for our types of products. And it does a few things in the system, but one of them, it just lowers the temperature that the regen happens at. And so you do get a much more complete regeneration just when you're normally driving the vehicle. And the consumers don't realize that. They know, the light comes on, it's going into a regeneration mode. But there is a form of regeneration that happens all the time once the DPF is up to temperature. So that's where it goes. Those consumers that aren't driving very far, they're the ones seeing much more frequent regenerations where it's coming up on the dashboard. And even then, if it's not up to temp, they're not out on the expressway and driving it, just doing some around town type stuff, it still isn't doing that regeneration. And what happens, you got this large amount of soot that builds up in there, and the regeneration turns that into a small amount of ash. And inevitably, if these regenerations don't happen, it will clog enough where your fuel mileage is going down, your power is going down, and then you're going to get into limp mode and aren't even going to be able to drive the vehicle.
As far as using it, it's just something that you'd add to the tank every 5,000 miles. And I'm sure there's a prescription, on the back of the bottle or the container to be able to say how much to use. So it's really just that easy to use.
Yeah, there's a preventive maintenance dosage like that, using it every 5,000 miles, preventive maintenance. It's just like any of the others. You're putting it into a full tank or you're adding it and then filling up the tank with diesel fuel. If you're into an issue where this thing's partially clogged, there's a little bit of a different instruction for that, where we want a lower amount of fuel in the tank, and then also running it through a little bit of a procedure, so you're actually working the engine, building some heat in that DPF, because you want to get it done quicker if you're having that issue.
Common question we get from you guys a lot is, hey, I need a diesel engine. I either, I can't wait this long to get one, or normal place I get stuff from it just takes too long, or they don't have the parts in it that I need. Maybe my truck's not stock, or I tow heavy with it. I don't want to go back with just a stock engine. DFC Diesel is a sponsor of the podcast. We worked with them, hand in hand on doing episodes, answering technical questions. They have a complete lineup of Cummins, Duramax, and Power Stroke remanufactured engines that are set to a standard of ISO 9001 2015 standards, which is a huge deal in the aftermarket. And there's certain levels of quality testing, validation that are required for that. So when you get one of those engines, the type of quality that's built behind it with an industry-leading warranty that's really comprehensive. And the other thing with that is, sometimes the options that are out there, it's a basic OEM engine. You want a little bit more. You don't want to have the same failure again. So there's a bunch of different series of engines that they have, from core, street, tow haul, and also the Speed of Air series, which we've covered on the podcast before. There's a lot of really cool benefits to it. And if you have questions about that, reach out to them. If you don't know the type of engine that you're looking for, if you go to dfcdiesel.com, there's a ton of info there. You can send an email or you can reach out to them. Also, they're working with Speed of Air pistons, which it's the only piston that pays for itself. And there's a lot of really cool technology behind it. So you can add that into your build and be able to get better fuel economy, increased power, increased torque, and better engine life out of it. Some of the most common engine applications or series of engines that they have with that lead time, a lot of them are in stock or they have really short lead times. So you can check your favorite retailer or go to dfcdiesel.com, check them out, see what's in stock, see what you can get. If you have questions, maybe you want to do something that's outside of the normal series of engines, they have tons of choices for rods, cranks, pistons, valve train upgrades, tons of different things. So if you're in the market, definitely make sure and head on over and check them out. Is there any point where the DPF is just too far gone where I guess a product like this won't work? Or is it, because I think it's an emergency situation that can happen if people aren't proactive, like we talked about, and they don't use any additives, they don't do anything, they just drive it, and then it just clogs up. Is there a point that it's just too clogged that it's not going to work, and you're probably in that bad situation where you're going to need a DPF or a brand new DPF or something like that?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. We'll be the first to tell you that, we can do the preventative, and if you're up to a certain point of severity, we can definitely help out with this product. We obviously recommend, even if it's a new vehicle, just going through, like Clay said, the kind of the treatment dosage every 5,000 miles. But yes, definitely if it's built up too much ash in the system over too many years, it's too far gone, we'll be the first to tell you that our product will probably not be able to help that out.
Thinking about that guy that bought the 2024, that it's kind of his retirement vacation truck. How quickly have either you guys or maybe some of your customers told you that they've had this issue with their DPFs? Can it be within 5 or 10,000 miles? Can it be faster? Is there kind of an average? That's probably a really tough question, because I guess it depends how people drive and all the other things.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's exactly what it is. But I would say, depending on you drive it, if you're doing a lot of shorter distance driving, 50 to 60,000 miles, which I think is pretty darn low in my opinion, where you'd be looking to have to replace that DPF. But it 100% depends on how you drive the vehicle. Okay.
So where the DEF issue, if I'm correct, that's something is I'm depending on the fluid. I'm depending on the quality of the storage, environmental factors. To me, that's something that can happen really quick. It could be a truck with 5,000 miles on it. I could start to have crystallization issues. Whereas with the DPF, that's going to be a little bit more longer term based on driving style, but I'm still going to hit that issue at one point or another if I'm not hooked to a trailer day in and day out, getting the temperatures up, having high RPM, just being in that zone that truck likes to be in for regenerations.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
The other part of this that really factors in, and I enjoyed touching on it a bit, was the fuel itself. And there's so many, like these systems they're all tied together, and I think it's what makes people most afraid about a modern diesel truck. We have the DEF fluid, we have the DPF, and then we get into fuel quality. And the fuel itself, which I think, and the burn and how well it atomizes the fuel is also factoring into how much soot is my DPF having to catch and regen and all that kind of stuff. How does fuel quality, fuel characteristics factor into maintenance on diesel trucks? And then how do you guys approach helping that side of it, whether it's lubricity, whether it's preventing gelling, which is huge all over the country. The last couple of weeks it's been freezing really far south and really cold. So I'm sure people who don't think about that typically woke up to snow and other issues, in the South and Midwest and different areas. But I wanted to touch on the fuel side and have you guys talk about some things that are maybe issues and then ways we can address them.
Eric, did you want that one?
There's a whole other series of potential issues that could occur with some of those. I mean, certain states are starting to add, like they're doing with some of the ethanol for gasoline. Some are adding more and more like biodiesel to the actual ultra low sulfur diesel at some of those pumps. So you could definitely see some issues from those. Like you said, the gelling and things like that. Depending on where you're at environmentally, the quality of your fuel may or may not matter. It's just if it's sitting, it's cold, maybe you're not driving as often, a lot of issues can come up. And I would say for some of those issues, I think we talked about it briefly last time, but we have that dual chamber bottle as our part number 4740. It's our diesel fuel cleaner, our hyper diesel fuel cleaner. And it's all the things you just mentioned, anti-gel, cetane improver. It does about 8 different things, and it's not the best on the market at any one of those things, but it's a great, one-off item to help kind of prevent and cure some of those issues in some of those vehicles, depending on the severity.
Since I got you guys here and you brought up biodiesel, I got to ask you a question about biodiesel. How are there different challenges that's introducing to people who own trucks, and then what you guys do in servicing this market? I don't know much about it. I've just kind of heard things in passing. I know a long time ago people would make their own fuel from different sources, but as far as it actually being introduced into the fuel supply, what can be some downsides? Are there any downsides? Is it not an issue? But I'm really curious about what biodiesel added in these incremental parts, if that does change the fuel quality dramatically, or what I need to think about with that.
Yeah, the 5% or so that we're seeing mostly in the U.S. Isn't so much of an issue, but it can if it sits for a while, especially think about some marine applications. You can get a lot of contamination. You can get the algae growth and some of the things that happen in the diesel tanks, which usually is more of a marine issue because they set. But yeah, other countries are looking at a lot of different things. We were doing a project over in Sweden where they're looking at 100% biodiesel out of pine trees is how they're actually making it. But the power out of it is much, much lower. So they need additives in there to boost the cetane and get trying to get the same performance that they would actually get even out of a diesel fuel. But the average person's probably not going to notice 5% in there and not going to be causing a lot of issues. But if it was pushed to get it higher, I think that especially some of the older diesels would have issues.
That's interesting. I know it's something that I think people have an interest in it, and they think, well, if it's maybe less expensive, or I can be proactive on the cost side, maybe it's beneficial. And just when you mentioned it there, Eric, I thought I got to ask him about that and how that can or cannot affect the situation. One of the other things I wanted to ask is I know you guys have diesel trucks there. You do lots of R&D. What being proactive with the maintenance on the DF side, the DPF side, and with the fuel, do you guys see longer term there's less issues? Because I'm sure you guys have maintenance costs with these trucks, things you guys are doing, and all the time and effort and miles you put on them and all the different things. Is there a comparison you can give us about, say, differences you guys have noticed, either in not having an issue with a component of the DEF system or the DPF itself, or maybe with the fuel system, maybe the injection pumps, depending on the truck you guys are using? But I think being able to compare it to real world experience that you guys have testing these trucks, testing these products, versus someone who's not using it is really important to highlight, as well, as far as operational maintenance costs.
Yeah, for sure you're going to be able to reduce that. Eric, I don't know if you have any numbers or anything that you can add on that side.
Nothing that's actual numbers, no. But like you mentioned, with the DPF, the DEF system, we definitely see that we can increase the longevity. And again, it's hard to give an actual number, based on driving style and quality of what you're putting into it. But we definitely see with regular maintenance like this, between the fuel, the DPF, the DEF system, you're saving a heck of a lot of money a year just by fuel economy, the power of your vehicle, if you're towing, you have reduced power and things like that. But then even injectors and, some of that smaller maintenance items, the cleaner you can keep your system, especially using some of these types of aftermarket additives, in the long run, you're going to be saving yourself money every single year, and you are going to increase the longevity of that system, depending on your driving style and, again, the quality of what you're putting into it.
Yeah, I think a couple of the components, the SCR for the DEF system, and then that DPF filter, I could confidently say that doubling the life, where you'd be having to have that component replaced, and then for a larger Class 8 where they are removable, where you can pull that DPF and have it cleaned. I can't say it's going to double in those particular cases because those trucks are being used like they're supposed to be used. But you're gonna substantially, I think, double-digit increase, percentage that you're going to have downtime with having to change those out.
I think these, like I go back to that email that I got from a listener, and I don't know what truck he had before, but a lot of people that I hear from, they have an older, like a pre-2007 truck, and the maintenance was, I don't want to say simple, but it was kind of standard, what we've been used to for 50 years, where change your oil, service your transmission, service your differentials. And then today, and I mean, this is 18 years of trucks, so whether you're buying brand new or something just a few years old, you're going to come into this maintenance part on a newer diesel truck, the DEF, the SCR, DPF, all those sorts of components. And so I think it's just really, it's great to see the proactive approach that you guys have taken with giving us options where we're not kind of beholden to the system and just kind of whatever happens. We might be dealing with thousands of dollars if we have to replace it. I can actually add product or be proactive with what I'm doing with these fluids to try to protect the hard components, in the truck, which is so different than what this conversation was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. It was just, there weren't any options for people. And I think, go ahead, Clayton.
I was going to say engine oil. I know you hadn't mentioned that, but if you're burning any oil, that's going to be what's going into that DPF. I mean, you've got metallic additives, zinc and phosphorus, even though that they've lowered them compared to where they were, say, back in the 90s or early 2000s in the diesel spec oils. They're still in there to do their job in the oil. So any type of burning, and then now we're going, I mean, used to be, as long as it was a 1540, you put it in and you run it. I mean, that was what you would do with your diesel. And then now you've got the 540s and some of these different oils, thinner weights, and there is chances for more oil to be burned. You got 4 valves per cylinder compared to 2 valves per cylinder in the older engines. So you got, valve seals. You got a little bit that has to get by those to actually lubricate the valve guide. But if it gets excessive, then it's being burned. So just monitoring your oil and make sure you're using the right oil.
Wanted to look forward a little bit when you mentioned the locomotives, trains, kind of that applications, Clayton. It got me thinking about the future, and I believe I don't know exactly, but I know emission standards change every given amount of years, and it can affect, it does affect the automotive side. And there's these new emerging markets that I'm sure there's equipment and other things that are now using. Like DF fluid and other parts. As you guys look forward, like as a company, and how these changes happen, how do you try to stay ahead of it to be able to offer those products for a particular industry or a platform that's going to be having an emissions tier change, or it's getting stricter, or something like that? Is it really tough? Is there any sort of conversations or things you guys plan, years ahead of time? How does it all integrate to be able to move forward and then offer these products as new markets emerge that require these kind of systems?
I think we're a different type of chemical and additive company, and easy for somebody to say, but we're members of ASTM and SAE, the Society of Automotive Engineers. It's nice where we're located here in Michigan because we're just north of Detroit. A lot of the big conferences are there. They have the World Congress, they call it. The people will come all over from the world and do presentations, write papers. It's a trade show. So we get to see some of the stuff that it's just theory right now. It hasn't even been practical, or maybe it's worked in a lab that they're working on some component. Could be some engine, after treatment device, all different types of things. So we're highly involved between Eric and myself, looking at, okay, what are these vehicles that are coming out right now? What's the problems that we're going to be seeing down the road? And then, okay, 2027 emissions are going to be adding another DPF filter. So some of these vehicles are going to have dual DPF filters to be able to meet these emissions. They're going to be using more DEF fluid. There's even another additive being used in Europe right now. So you have a third tank. So you got your diesel fuel tank, you have your DEF fluid tank, and they have a third tank that's injecting fluid in to help meet some of the new Euro emissions that are going to be coming too. So it's crazy. I think back to the olden days of just, engines. We're not going to be able to work on these things anymore. Back when they started the Power Stroke with the electronic injection things that they did, or thinking about gasoline when distributorless ignition came out. No more distributor, and fuel injected into no more carburetor. We can't touch any of this. There's always opportunities, and for us, there's opportunities, to offer products and solutions. Me as a consumer driving that vehicle, there's just seems like there's more to go wrong.
Does with the two DPFs, is that something in the 2027 standards that would apply to pickup trucks, or is it that defined yet, or where you guys would know, hey, this is going to be coming towards for GM and Ram, or is that for a different type industry, or how does that work?
No, it's for automotive, and it's just rumors right now. Sometimes it's hard to get information out of the OEMs until they actually launch it, but that is what we're hearing that's going to be required to meet some of these regulations.
Okay. Yeah, I know I've heard some things about gas DPFs and other things, so it doesn't seem like that's slowing down at all.
Nope. In fact, they have those in Europe. There is DPFs, I guess it's not a DPF, but a particulate filter on gasoline vehicles over there because of the direct injection. That direct injection on the gasoline vehicles does cause some of this soot in this issue, a little bit like what happens with the diesel.
Okay, that'll be something to definitely keep our eye on, and I'm sure once those hit, we can learn more about them, chat with you guys. I know you'll be ahead of the curve with it. And a lot of times people, they have questions, and I don't think to ask it, or like our conversation, what we're discussing might not touch on something either a fleet or a particular customer might have. And I wanted to ask you guys about your dealer network where people can buy the product, but then also how they can ask you guys questions and connect with you guys in the team there to be able to have these very specific questions answered. Is it best to go on the website? How would I navigate it to be able to contact you guys? And then say, I've listened about, treating my DF fluid or the DPF or the fuel products we've talked about. Where can I buy Rislone products?
Yeah, if you go to our Rislone.com website, I would say that's a good place to start. We did do some updates to it recently. It's extremely easy to navigate. So you can go in there, look up exactly, what kind of system you have, what type of additive you're trying to put in. It'll bring you to a couple different options. From there, you can actually put in your zip code, and it will tell you, the nearest store to you that sells that product. Most of our stuff is available online through Amazon, a couple of the other big ones, .coms. But then from there, we do have a 1-800 number you can call, and all those tech support people are actually sitting right here in Michigan. So, you get a real life person that knows what they're talking about, that works for our company. You can also send in an email to the same group of people, and they're very knowledgeable. They'll be able to point you in the right direction, make a recommendation. And if not, sometimes they do reach out to even Clay and myself, and we're able to give a little bit of more supplemental information. So I'd say go to the website. It's easy to navigate, like I said, and find what you're looking for. And if you need a little help, feel free to reach out to us anytime.
I really appreciate you guys talking with us through these products and these issues. It's very unique to be able to chat with the manufacturer about what they're seeing, the ways that they're addressing these issues that diesel truck owners are facing, and to see the response from people and the comments. It was just really cool to see how it actually solved some issues that people had, and in some cases there was a lot of money that a local dealership wanted to be able to just replace the product. And that could be really tough financially. It could be really tough with lead times, with the supply chain, things like that you guys have saved a lot of people money. So I appreciate you guys chatting with me today about these different products, the ways that we can use them for our diesel truck. And yeah, I love your guys' website. I do encourage people to go on there, browse around.
I do have one new one that we want to talk about. Just real brief, because of the fleets asking us for larger sizes. Next month we're launching it's a 33-ounce bottle, but one bottle is going to treat a 55-gallon drum, and then a case of 6 will treat your 330 tote IBC, whatever you want to call that. So that'll be launching. First available will be online. The website, it'll be added to the website too once it launches, and then we are already talking to some of the truck stops and places where you're going to be able to buy it. But so first to hear about it.
Oh, very cool. Awesome. That'll address a lot of the questions we get that, these guys have a lot of it and they have a lot of equipment that uses it, and they need it for more than just their pickup trucks. And that's a great solution. Awesome, guys. Well, I appreciate your time today chatting with me. Look forward to seeing this new product release, and I'll keep compiling questions we get from our audience to be able to ask you guys. So it was great chatting with you.
Yeah, sounds great.
Thank you.
Don't forget, diesel fans, make sure and head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code 25TDP40. It'll get you 40% off MSRP. It's a great way to save some money and get some cool gear if you're in the market for a new EDC knife, something for hunting, fishing, around the job site, around the house. They've got a bunch of different options for blade steel, blade shape, different handle designs, different opening mechanisms. And their whole lineup's designed to meet any budget that you might have. So we really appreciate them offering that discount code just for Diesel podcast listeners. Also wanted to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters: Tyler Loewen of 23 Diesel, CUTTERUP Rob, Robert, all of our other Patreon supporters, all of you who subscribe on YouTube and podcast apps, follow us on social media. We appreciate all your support here in year 9 of the Diesel podcast and look forward to bringing you more of the content that you want to hear in 2025. Till next time, keep the shiny side up.